Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about filing claims and a few other miscellaneous issues pertaining to Social Security and programs administered by Social Security and so forth. So, just as a starting point, and this may seem sort of obvious in retrospect, but um, claims do have to be filed to receive benefits. So, if you think that you qualify for a particular program, or you've hit retirement age, you're retired, um, or became disabled, or et cetera, then basically you do have to file a claim. The government's not just going to magically start sending you money. You actually have to file appropriate claims in order to start receiving benefits. So when you file claims is going to affect when you start receiving benefits. So with that in mind, one of the things that would be very important to note would be you need to start communicating with the Social Security Administration. So call the Social Security Administration and possibly schedule an appointment. And there are in many places local Social Security Administration offices. So you might need to get an appointment at a Social Security Administration office to try to file claims or get help with filing claims or discuss the situation, et cetera. You can also visit the Social Security Administration website and get guidance there. And of course, the benefit of that is you can do it pretty much whenever you've got internet access. So that's kind of nice. But at some point, for certain types of things, you may well have to actually go into a Social Security Administration office and speak with somebody. So that means you got to call them, you got to schedule an appointment, and then you're going to have to go there and everything else. Or if you can schedule an appointment. So there are some interesting things as it relates to sort of what does or does not affect benefits. So let's talk about marriage and divorce and the effect on benefits and so forth. So for the benefits based upon the worker's own employment history are not affected by marriage and divorce. So um, if you're the worker in your family and you've got all the qualified quarters, et cetera, then basically your benefits are based on your own employment history and they are not affected by marriage or in divorce in terms of their benefit calculations and things like that. Now, I suppose in divorce you could have alimony payments or whatever else, but that's technically a separate issue. Um, Now, the benefits that you receive that are based upon your spouse's or perhaps ex-spouse's employment history, those are potentially affected by marriage and divorce, right? So basically, if you are counting on spousal benefits, then marriage and divorce do affect things yeah, potentially, and so that's something to be mindful of as far as those situations are concerned. Also, change of name. So perhaps one of the more common points in time in which somebody's name is changed is due to a marriage. So if a person's name is changing as a result of marriage or really for any reason at all, this means that you need to have a conversation with the Social Security Administration and file paperwork and all this kind of stuff. So if it's due to a marriage, probably going to need to provide marriage certificate and who knows what other documentation. And this is when you're probably going to need to actually have a face-to-face meeting with somebody at a Social Security Administration office and basically fill out paperwork, provide proof of marriage, um, all those kinds of things, basically to get your name officially changed under Social Security. And then that would get you a new Social Security card issued in your new name. And basically the reason this is going to be really important is they have to make sure that your prior employment history all lines up with and is tracking over to and attached to your new name, right? So, you got to keep everything on the same page. And so that's going to be extremely important. If you just change your name for some reason, same situation. So if you're legally changing your name, then you need to go in there and make sure that this is all addressed on the Social Security Administration side of things. So don't assume that just because you got some kind of a court order or something else, that magically addressed everything with Social Security. That's not necessarily true. Okay, probably not. So basically, you need to make sure that it's all addressed and everything has been correctly done so that your employment history remains intact and all of that information continues. Now, you can receive projected benefit statements with an online account through the Social Security Administration website. So if you go through the Social Security Administration website, you can set up an online account and you can access projected benefit statements. So basically, they're looking at your employment history that you have, and they're kind of projecting out what your benefit level would look like based upon kind of the information that they have at this point. So you can actually do that and assess that, and that would be a helpful document to have when you start doing financial planning and retirement planning and all those kinds of things. Now, another interesting little quirk, if you work in the United States, you have all the necessary quarters, you qualify for Social Security, and then you move abroad. So if you move abroad afterwards, say in retirement, there are some countries that can limit your ability to receive Social Security payments. So there are, I think, a couple of countries. I think it was like North Korea and well, Cuba is what comes to mind. But I think there are a couple of companies or countries. Sorry, if you move to them, then they actually they won't send Social Security payments. Period. Um, on the other hand, if you move to certain other countries, there may be, weird limits or restrictions and, all kinds of interesting things. So if you are moving abroad, that's another thing that you would want to check to make sure that, all right, if you qualify for Social Security, you're counting on getting Social Security and you're like, I'm going to move to, some country somewhere. Make sure you've done your due diligence that this is not going to, upend your financial plans by affecting your ability to receive Social Security payments and things like that. Also, an interesting little note, there are some provisions that are called a windfall elimination provision and government pension offset provision. And these are basically for special circumstances. So basically with kind of the windfall elimination provision, there are certain situations, and this is more true for people who probably began their careers longer ago than perhaps more recently. But there have been historically some interesting kind of situations and quirks, and that led to certain populations not having contributed to Social Security in the same way that other folks did. And so basically, kind of what could happen with that is a situation in which if somebody worked in one of those kind of situations where they maybe qualified for a basically they qualified for a like a federal pension or something like that, but they didn't pay Social Security taxes. So that was actually kind of a thing at one point where basically they were kind of under a separate carved out system where it's like, they qualified for a a certain type of pension, but because they were under a specific type of pension, they didn't pay Social Security taxes. But then if they qualified for that pension, but then they also went out and worked in another place of employment long enough to qualify for Social Security, they kind of what's happening is you're looking at it like, well, so kind of they sort of avoided Social Security taxes for this whole section of their career on the premise that they would get this pension, which they've gotten. And then, but then they worked this other job and then qualified for Social Security during the other job. And so, from the government's perspective, it's kind of like, well, you're kind of double dipping here. The whole reason they didn't charge you taxes earlier on is because you're going to get this pension, which you got. And so, that's sort of a windfall kind of a scenario. And so basically, what this essentially addresses is basically says, okay, so there's going to be an adjustment to how those benefits are calculated to essentially account for this kind of situation, basically. And so that's kind of the idea behind those kinds of situations. That there can be some interesting, kind of special circumstances with unique job situations that had pensions and didn't involve paying Social Security taxes, and basically it could result in technically lower benefit amounts from Social Security. But the reason for that was basically to kind of put everybody back on even playing field, essentially. Now, more recently, I think it's more the norm, probably where generally I think more of those positions are actually paying like Social Security taxes and all those kinds of things. So I think that's a little bit more common now. So it's not as typical of a situation, but it is worth noting that there were certain people in certain jobs that had kind of odd situations like that. But there are provisions for that basically try to offset that to basically try to level the playing field. Okay, hopefully that helped a little bit. And thank you so much for watching and have a great day.